Thank you, everyone.
Okay.
Please have a seat.
So in 2009, 2010, maybe 2010 or 11, we started having to control spotted wing Drosophila, and that requires increased applications of insecticides, and it requires application of insecticides at harvest, which means you're going to end up with insecticide residues, and that has made it increasingly difficult to export raspberries because of MRL issues. It seems to be a common theme throughout this meeting. There's lots of presentations that involve MRLs, and I've got two today that involve MRLs, and this is, well, I got two more that mention MRLs. So I have three talks today. This one's about insecticides, one's about fungicides, one's about herbicides. It's just a big issue. About 20% or so of Washington raspberries are exported. On a per pound basis, the export market is more valuable than the domestic market, so it puts a lot of pressure on growers to try and develop exports, and using the insecticides to control SWD has made it harder to export raspberries. We have had shipments of raspberries that are rejected because of insecticide residues, but more importantly, there are a lot of raspberry product that can't be exported, that could be exported because of the insecticide residues. So I was given a task of figuring out how to control spotted wing Drosophila in raspberries that wouldn't violate MRLs, which would allow exports to increase. It seems difficult, but my thought is if it was easy, anybody could do it. So we have no shortage of products that give close or perfect control of spotted wing Drosophila, but it can be hard without, but it becomes more difficult because of MRLs. But I had this idea. I gave a talk yesterday about how to control blueberries with organic products. I was using blackberries as the surrogate for that, and I thought I could extrapolate some of the lessons that we've learned over several years on that project. And what I was going to do was we start off with a conventional program that's got the synthetic products, the harder products, the ones that we have a lot of confidence in, and then we integrate to products that are exempt from, that are tolerance or MRL exempt products later in the season. We use an over-the-road sprayer calibrated, I think 100 gallons per acre. We did this on primocane raspberries, and SWD is a bigger problem later in the season, so we did primocanes to increase the likelihood that we would have SWD. I've done work like this before, and nothing is more frustrating to do a lot of work like this and end up with no spotted wing Drosophila in your trial. So a potential criticism to our work is, would work done on primocanes be applicable to fluorocanes? And I'll let the industry can take a shot at me for this, and we can switch to fluorocane if that's appropriate. But because it was in fluorocane, the applications were later. But we did 6 applications. It was done in Whatcom County, just near God, I forgot where it was here, east of Linden. And you can see the dates, and we before we did every application, we sampled, and then we sampled for a few days after the last application. This is an example of more of the conventional program. We applied Delegate, then we applied malathion, then bifenthrin, malathion, Mustang Max, and one application of Grandivo. So this is closer to a standard program. But this is an example of the program that I was going to try. We started out Danitol, malathion, Mustang Max, pre-harvest, and then during harvest, Grandivo plus Jet Ag followed by Venerate plus Jet Ag, and then we went back to Grand Evo and Jet Ag for the final application. And these are all products that you don't have to worry about for MRLs, but you got to worry about whether they'll control spotted-wing Drosophila. The logic on this is we're going to use the big guns early. Hopefully we can knock back the spotted-wing Drosophila program, and then we have softer products that we don't have to worry about, MRLs. And this stuff is, all this is registered on Raspberries. So it doesn't show well, or I'm not good enough or patient enough to be able to figure out how to get all this on the screen so you can read it. But I just want to point out that this is an untreated check where we didn't spray anything, and we ended up with 8% of the fruit infested with spotted-wing Drosophila. So what would happen if you didn't do anything. The program that we used that had the hard products through the season ended up with 0.5%. So out of 100 fruit, 1/2 of it was infected. So for there's one maggot every 200 berries. So that's what our standard was. This is a program where I just explained Danitol, Malathion, Mustang Max pre-harvest, then post-harvest, Grand Evo, Jet Ag, Venerate Jet Ag, Grand Evo had 0.3. This actually is a little bit of a rounding error. It was 0.25, but when I made it to one significant digit, it rounded up to 0.3. So this had half the number of the standard, but there's really no significant difference here. The next program we did, Danitol, Malathion, Mustang Max with a similar program, had 2.5% of the berries 2.5% of the berries were infested. Another program, Delegate Malathion bifenthrin with the soft program, had 2% infested. I'm not sure why, but the Delegate Malathion Brigade, followed by Venerate, Grand Evo Venerate, 6.8, very similar to untreated check. The 7th program, Delegate Malathion bifenthrin with Success Jet Ag in this, had 2.5% of the fruit infested. So that was the efficacy of it. We had one program that worked as well as the standard. We had 2 that were not quite as good as the standard. We had a program that just flat did not work. So that's part of the story. The other story is, what about the pesticide residues? So you get what you get. This is treatment 2. This is a standard, and remember, 8% of the fruit in the untreated check was infested. 0.5% of the fruit in the standard was infested. But you get these, you get residues, and this is a residue at first harvest. This is middle harvest. This is later in the season. And so there's bifenthrin, Malathion. The interesting thing is, where did spinosad come from? Because it wasn't applied. So this is one of 2 things. When you look at how low of a level that is, that's what you call noise. It's right at the limit of detection. That could mean there was no spinosad. It also could be due to drift. So for the sake of this discussion, numbers like this are treated as if they're 0. This is a program that had slightly less SWD than a conventional program. You can see the residues are there. But if you look at the MRLs, this program, which gave as good a control as the standard program, the conventional program, would meet Japan, Canada, Taiwan, and South Korea MRLs. It wouldn't meet Hong Kong, China, and the EU, for the simple reason they have some MRLs that are either 0 at limit of detection. It's just, we're never going to be able to use these products and go to that market. The one that had 2% of the fruit infested could meet, again, Canada, Japan, Taiwan, South Korea, but not China, Hong Kong, and EU. A program that had 2.5% of the fruit, again, could meet Korea, Japan, Canada, Taiwan MRLs, but not EU, Hong Kong, and China. So this is not going to be a 30-minute talk unless you guys have a lot of questions. I will tell you, I felt this is going to be a very difficult project. I did not have high hopes, but this is some very good progress in the first year. So like any good researcher, I'm going to submit for more money. Um, and if funded for year 2, we need to duplicate this. I would not advise anyone to do this on a commercial scale unless you're, I guess, willing to take the risk and you check and you pull a sample and test for the residues. But we need to duplicate this to see what happens in year 2. I think we can do some things and get the residue down further. I think that we can do some better job on efficacy. A couple of our windows were a little wider than I'd like to go 5 days. Some of those applications went out to 7 days. I think we can do a better job. Now, one thing about looking at my results, someone might say, well, those ones that were at 2% or 2.5%, that's not acceptable in a commercial operation. One of the things that you have to realize when you're doing work like what I'm doing, we had untreated checks right in the field, and we also had some programs that didn't seem to work. And because of that, within where our trial is, the pressure is high, and it's probably unrealistically high. And so we probably would never get the same level of control in a plot with products like these that you would if you use those products on the whole field. I believe that you would get better efficacy. The ones that were like at 2%, if you treated the whole field like that, you would be lower than 1%. I think it would work better in a commercial scale than what it's doing in a small plot trial. But we need to do more work on this. So anyway, that was the point that I just made. So I'm going to submit a proposal to the Red Raspberry Commission to do some funding next year. I haven't even talked to Henry about this. I haven't really talked to anyone about this. But I'm working with Bev Gerdeman to try and get some additional funding for this. I'm going to submit to the Commission on Pesticide Registration. Henry knows about that. But there's another money that Bev and I have never submitted for, and she actually, one of the reasons she's not here today is she's actually writing the grant proposal. And I've got this concept, I've got an idea on how to develop a program that would meet MRLs for all countries. Now, the catch to that is it's got to work, and I don't know if it will work. It's going to take some time and some money. But the other interesting thing is we think we can expand this program. Get ready for this one, where we can control SWDs, meet MRLs, and not flare mites. How does that sound, Henry? Just get that check out right now. I felt very happy, very successful about our first year. That was kind of a proof of concept. And give me an inch and I'll take a mile. I think that we can do better, get some better results. And I've got an idea that I can come up with a program that would allow you guys to meet MRLs for any country. I just don't know whether it will work. That's kind of an important point, but I got something to try. So this is kind of a simple talk. I don't have a whole lot of data. I didn't have a whole lot of money. We did this on a shoestring. I can't remember what it was. I think it was $15,000, and almost all that money went to Tom Walters, who did the application, and the Synergistic Pesticide Lab to do the analysis. So I'm hoping to get some more money and have a more robust program next year. Yes, Daryl?
Out of curiosity, I don't know this, but do the processors test their own fruit for MRLs, or they have to send it out? What's the deal on that?
If somebody is an exporter they have it tested, because nobody, if you have a container, I don't know what a container of I can tell you this, a container of polybagged blueberries shipped to Japan, once it gets to Japan, could be worth like $500,000. And if it gets to Japan and it gets rejected because of residues, you've got a very expensive problem on your hands. And so no one can afford this. So I would say that almost all handlers are testing their fruit before it gets shipped. Right? Back row there? Yeah. So that's the answer. Any questions? Is it hard? Okay, I see someone say yes. I said, no, it's not. You just pull a sample, ship it, and write a check to someone. It's all money. I mean, but you got to send it to the right kind of lab. They have to know what they're doing. They've got $1 million worth of lab equipment, and they got to use high pressure liquid chromatograph or a mass spec, equipment that nobody in this room knows how to use. So, what's that? I can't hear you. Okay, it takes time. I don't know if Bev Gerdeman gave a talk yesterday. She used the same lab I did, and she still doesn't have her results back. So, it can take a while unless you pay a lot of money. Any other questions? I've got some time. Yes.
That do import to EU, and what are their spray programs?
I couldn't tell you. I don't know.
Any questions? So,
all right, I'm
if
sitting
there's
down.
no questions, I guess, yeah, we finished this earlier, and our thank you very much. Our next speaker is Dr. Choi from USD ARS, and his speak is about some sugar formulation used to control the SWD. Let's enjoy his talk.
Touch screen, so if you need a laser.